The mainstream media has changed. If you are trusting Robert Peston, Beth Rigby and Laura Koonsberg to give you your news, you've got something wrong. They are captured. They have an agenda.
What's the truth behind the sacking of GB News?
There had been this relentless campaign to destroy me.
What about the current situation with the royal family?
You've got Harry and Meghan constantly stirring the pot. They want to bring down Catherine and William.
Do you think Diana was killed?
I think it's the legitimate area of investigation. When people say the deep state doesn't exist, look at what happened in the UK that week.
Who runs this deep state? Who are these powerful, controlling people or organisations?
Well, there's a couple of aspects to it.
So, Dan, what's the truth behind the sacking of GB News? I mean, was it even a sacking? What is the truth?
So, obviously, I'd been in a really difficult spot for about 3 months. There had been this relentless campaign to destroy me, literally to destroy my reputation by an outlet that is not credible, is unregulated, is literally staffed by criminals, is funded nefariously, was working with Prince Harry, who was one of my big enemies. So you've got all of that going on.
What was the outlet?
They're called Byline Times.
Right.
I actually hate giving them publicity.
Right.
But given you've asked, I'll answer anything you ask me. But I don't like platforming their reporting because their reporting was untrue, right? Completely untrue. And this is what happens using this trial by social media. People spread untrue rumors. You prove it's untrue, but then people repeat the untrue rumors.
Yes. So
they had launched this campaign against me.
Do you know why?
I mean, there's a whole number of reasons why. They're a hard left outfit. My show had overtaken Farage, guy who I like a lot, but it had overtaken Farage in the ratings battle. So I was #1 on GB News. That happened in May 2023. My show was gaining lots of influence and lots of power. So that's one reason. The second reason is that the people who run it, the people who are behind it, again, I'll name them if you want me to, but I'm more than happy not to because they get off on the attention. But they had a real personal vendetta against me for various reasons. 2 of them were former colleagues of mine at the News of the World. One of them is a convicted phone hacker, and the other was a failed journalist. And then, as I say, the third big influence of this was Prince Harry, who, as you know, has been on I'd call it a deranged campaign, actually, to shut down his enemies in the British media. And I would say probably I was up there in the top 3 enemies, the others being people like Rebecca Brooks, the chief executive of News UK, and Piers Morgan at the Daily Mirror. And you will have seen quite recently, Harry has called for the Metropolitan Police to reopen their investigation into accusations of phone hacking against Piers Morgan from years ago. So I know for a fact that Harry and Harry's team were working very closely with this organisation, Byline Times. They were certainly helping to find money for them. I'm going to be careful with what I say about that because I'm still doing lots of reporting on this myself to find out the whole truth of what went on. But it was a campaign, and initially GB News stood quite strong. The Daily Mail didn't. I mean, they ran immediately. They say they're against cancel culture, and then they immediately cancelled me based on untrue allegations.
So when you say cancelled you, what? They just fired you, did they? Or?
No, they paused my column. They paused my column.
Same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't in a position to fire me. You know, contractually, they had to pay me. But it's not about that, is it? I've never done anything for the money. I'm not a money-motivated person. That's not ever why I've done my jobs. You know, I do it because I'm passionate about it, because of the love of it. So yeah, they effectively took away my platform. Again, I mean, I'm not wanting to sound arrogant. I'm just stating the facts. I was the most read columnist anywhere in the world for the Daily Mail, #1. So it was a really curious decision. And again, I found out they're completely terrified of Prince Harry because he's on this massive campaign against them as well. I don't know if you've heard about it, but he's taking them to court alongside people like Elton John, claiming that there were all sorts of dodgy deeds done years and years ago. Right. So they're terrified of him. So they just thought, oh, we're just going to cut loose. And then, I know it's a very long-winded answer, sorry, but bringing you to your question, there was this incident, and I watched your interview with Lawrence Fox. There was this incident with Lawrence Fox on air, and I think I was sort of like a cat who'd used up my 9 lives. And so the decision was made after that incident by both GB News to take me off air and the Daily Mail to literally sack me publicly, even though they had to keep paying me. It was like they just wanted to say, we're nothing to do with this guy. Now, the incident itself was completely hysterical. A mainstream media beat up. Lawrence made this comment about not wanting to shag Ava Santina, who's a hard left journalist who has used the words shag against her male enemies time and time again.
And wasn't she at the time demeaning men's mental health?
Yes, so she basically said, oh, how ridiculous that there should be a minister for men. You know, men don't need a minister. So Lawrence was really angry about her comments. I mean, personally,
in true Lawrence style, he could have been more elegant with his language.
Of course he could have. I mean, it wasn't a particularly pleasant thing to say. He didn't want to shag this woman. But what's so crazy, and I was actually watching back the clip for the first time the other day, and it's so anodyne. And everyone was saying, oh, you didn't provide any balance. I literally did. Lawrence made the comment. I was told in my ear, you know, because you have your little producer in your ear at GB News trying to get you to stick to the official narrative all the time.
Right.
So the producer in the air said to me, provide some balance. So I was looking through my iPad to find the tweets that Ava Santina had published. I read out those tweets. And then I said, and the thing is, Lawrence, she's actually a very beautiful woman. And you know what's crazy? The off-communists, now they are the government regulator of the media in the UK. The off-communists say that I was terrible and misogynistic for saying that Ava Santina was a beautiful woman. So what we're saying is Lawrence should be taken off air because he says he doesn't want to shag her. I should be taken off air because I say that she's beautiful. I mean, this is complete and utter madness. No one cared when Douglas Murray, good pal of mine, but went on the Piers Morgan show a couple of weeks beforehand, and he was talking about Sam Smith, and he said, I don't want to shag it. No one cared. Piers Morgan didn't step in, didn't demand this apology. So what happened, Rob, and this is what you will find a lot these days, is the whole establishment, and I'm not actually joking, this people will say, oh, you're paranoid, but I've got evidence and examples of this. The whole establishment and the mainstream media came together to quite literally take away both Lawrence's and my mainstream media platform. It went overnight. Now you'll see Lawrence was literally arrested by the Metropolitan Police in the same week over comments he made about you, Les.
There were, 5 police officers or more? I saw that, yeah.
And so I'm motivated. And when it came to me, the Metropolitan Police announced that they were investigating me because of these false allegations made months and months ago by the Byline Times. But they announced that in the week of the GB News incident. Now, of course, I have since been completely cleared, completely exonerated. No evidence was even handed to the CPS because I was able to prove categorically, right, with corroborative evidence that this whole thing was a stitch-up. But when people say the deep state doesn't exist, Rob, look at what happened to Lawrence and I that week.
So
everyone came together at the same time to destroy us.
All the mainstream media outlets.
Yeah, but not just mainstream media. The establishment, you know, the Metropolitan Police. Wow. Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, was wheeled out on Sly News, as I call it, to say that Lawrence and Dan Wootton should never be able to broadcast again. Seriously. Now, No one says that when Jo Brand goes on the BBC and says she wants to douse Nigel Farage in battery acid. No one says that when a comedian goes on the Frankie Boyle show, a black female comedian goes on the Frankie Boyle show and says that she wants to kill Whitey. I didn't say a thing. I literally didn't say a thing. So Megan Kelly, who's a good friend of mine, and she was actually on the show that day. She's the brilliant American broadcaster. She was waiting, like, because, you know, we had Lawrence on first and then there'd be an ad break and then Megan would come on. So Megan was watching the whole segment. She could not believe it. She could not believe that GB News capitulated. She quit the channel as a result, which is a huge loss for them. I mean, she's one of the best broadcasters in America. And she said to me, Dan, you were the first person in the world who's been cancelled for not being offended enough by something. I literally didn't say a thing, yet I was still cancelled. The former Prime Minister was going on national television to say I should never broadcast again, and the Metropolitan Police announced a spurious investigation into me. When people say the deep state doesn't exist, look at what happened in the UK that week. Over nothing. Over absolutely nothing. And since, by the way, the off-communists have found in breach of GB News for that incident.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, they wanted to silence us.
Do you know why?
Yeah, we were. I mean, look, Lawrence had been challenging the establishment in very dramatic ways for some time. I think with me, it was much more subtle. And I honestly believe what it was is that on my GB News show, which, as I say, had become the #1 show on the channel, and we were beating BBC News and Sly News every night in the 24-hour news battle. And the difference between me and other broadcasters in the UK is that I spent much of my show criticising the rest of the mainstream media. So usually in the UK, there's been this thing of, like, even Nigel Farage and Jacob Rees-Mogg, they don't really criticise the BBC or Channel 4 News or Woke ITV because they want to go on those channels. They want to be interviewed on those channels. You couldn't pay me enough money to go on Sly News or the BBC or Channel 4 News. You know, they've all tried to interview me time and again over the past few months. I would never, ever be interviewed by someone like them. I'd be interviewed by someone like you, who I can trust and who I know you'll ask me tough questions, but you don't come into this, or at least I think you don't.
I don't.
Wanting to destroy me.
No,
Whereas, you know,
why would I do that?
I know that if I was going on the BBC, it's literally...
Right, yeah.
So I called them out. Every night I would call out their false reporting, I would call out their bias, I would call out their anti-white racism, night after night after night, and they hated it.
I would love to know, though, I'm fascinated by the deep state, or, you know, who really runs and controls the world. And not because I'm a conspiracy theorist, which some might brand me as, just because I want to know it's our world. We're supposed to have a democracy. I want it to be a better place. I fight for everyone's free speech. You know, so even if I don't know them, I was a supporter of you when that happened. Even before we knew each other, I was a supporter of Lawrence when they went for Joe Rogan. Good luck, but, you know, they went for him.
You know,
they went for...
that?
Really, I know. Yeah. The thing is, the big ones, they just make even more powerful.
Yeah.
But if I don't fight for your right for free speech, then I'm next. And it's a coward who will only defend themselves and not everyone else. And even if I vehemently don't agree with someone, they, I believe, should have a right to speak freely. So I'd love to connect back. Who runs this deep state? Who are these powerful, controlling people or organisations? I mean, you must know.
Well, there's a couple of aspects to it. So you've got the macro and the micro. So I call the macro the big globalist organisations. So that's the World Health Organization. They were particularly critical during COVID. Donald Trump was the only world leader prepared to stand up to them. Actually, everyone else completely gave in. You've got the World Economic Forum, and now you've got the United Nations, you know, which I think is a completely nefarious force on the world. I mean, who ever would have thought that someone like me would be calling out the United Nations? But they really are. I mean, look at the ideology that they're pushing, for example, when it comes to the gender movement. It's insane. So they are the big global organizations. That's where there's a lot of the big money from the billionaires, you know, Bill Gates, George Soros, those sorts of people. Then on a micro level, you have the blob in the UK. That's what Dominic Cummings branded. I thought it was a very good term. And effectively, the blob are the civil servant workers who believe in these globalist movements, who do everything they can to frustrate the daily decisions that ministers want to make. So they are the people who say, look, it's going to be absolutely impossible, Suella Braverman, for you to ever put illegal immigrants on a plane and send them to Rwanda. And they spend their whole life trying to stop the government from implementing the will of the people. And so look at what the Conservative government has done over the past 5 years. Virtually nothing. And when you look at their power over, it was extreme. They, I think, at times basically gaslit Boris Johnson into keeping the country locked down. They threatened him. They said, you're going to be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. And the problem is, those people are in lockstep with the mainstream media. And this is going to get so much worse, because obviously by the time Labour is in power in the UK, under Slippery Starmer, as I call him, they'll have all of a sudden gained control. I mean, by the way, again, when people say this is a conspiracy theory, then why on earth has Sue Gray, who was number 2 in all of the civil service in the UK, and she was the person, do you remember, who led the investigation that I call it a complete kangaroo court investigation into Boris Johnson over the so-called Partygate incidents about the parties he didn't even attend. Well, that was a woman called Sue Gray who claimed that she was completely impartial, right? We could trust her. She wasn't looking to witch hunt against Boris Johnson. We were meant to believe that. At the time, I called her out time and again. I knew what she was doing. Well, guess what? Couple of years ago, she leaves the civil servant and she is now running Starmer's campaign. She's the head honcho within the Labour Party. So that's how I look at it. You've got the macro, you've got the micro, you've got the globalist organisations who are wanting to control the shape of the world. They're wanting to get rid of borders altogether. They want to take away our personal rights. They want to introduce social credit systems. They want to stop us from flying. They want to introduce 15-minute cities. But then you have, on a much lower level here in the UK, you have the government workers who make it virtually impossible for politicians to get anything done. And you speak to the sound cabinet ministers like I have, people like Suella, Priti Patel, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Nadine Dorries. They will tell you how it is virtually impossible to actually get things done because of the system of government. Now, I still blame the Conservative Party for this. Why did they not change it? They've had 14 years in power. So the system in America, which is much more effective, is that most of the civil servants are party political. So they are actually... the new party comes in, the Republicans come in, all of the Democrats leave. What it means is that actually more stuff can get done.
Yeah, I mean, weirdly, tens of thousands, and I'm not exaggerating, of my followers have said, Rob, you should run for Prime Minister with some of the basic things. I think I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And if, when you run a company which has to make a profit, and if you trade insolvently, that's actually illegal, or you can be struck off as a director, you have to look at who's mobile, who's friction, get rid of friction, increase mobility. If they're good, keep them. If they're not good, let them go. For years, people have been asking me where I buy my watches. Many of you may know I'm a watch collector, I'm a watch investor, and those as an asset class have done me very well in the last 15 years. I have never shared where I source my watches from or my watch dealer until now. My watch dealer used to be a professional footballer for Manchester United, and he formed a watch brand called Broadwalk, and he sources the higher end brands like Rolex, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe and Richard Mille. I trust him, I've used him for many years, and recently we've done a partnership, hence I'm inviting you, if you want to start investing in watches and protect your money from the banks and inflation, to check out Broadwalk. That's BROADWALK. And the website is broadwalkgroup.com. The email is sales@broadwalkgroup.com. And please don't share this, but his number is 07496 878 153. Obviously, only message him if you're serious about buying and investing in the higher end watches. People have been asking me for years, and for the first time ever, you can get access to my watch dealer. And yet in government, we've got most of them who are no good. and they're really slow and they're immobile
Yeah.
and they all get paid. And
But they're jobs for life as well.
yeah, and they work from home most of the time, a lot of the time now.
Well, you say work from home. I would actually argue they barely work. I mean, I'm not even joking. If you look at organisations now like HMRC, or look at what happened with the post office scandal.
Let's not get the HMRC to get good though.
No, but the thing is,
But I mean, they are. Yeah.
But oh yeah, actually, do you know what? Don't get me started on HMRC. Just trust me. These are completely ineffective.
Oh, they are. You can be
departments.
7 hours on the phone to HMRC trying to pay them money.
Totally. So the country is slowly breaking down, and it's only going to get worse, unfortunately.
This makes me really sad. Really sad.
Me too.
Because
It's not what the people want.
no, and there's so many great things about Britain.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't say I'm a major fan of the monarchy, but it was just something so great and unique that we had, and it was our greatest
I
tourist
am.
attraction.
I'm a big
Oh, you
fan.
are?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to come to that in a moment because that's obviously changed.
I'm a big fan. I still think they deserve scrutiny, though, actually.
Well, surely we all do. Isn't that what government is for? To keep...
Of course.
Yeah.
And we pay for them.
Yeah.
You know, the people pay for the monarchy, so they do deserve scrutiny.
Yeah. Okay, so wow, I could go to 14 different places here. Let's stick on your cancelling.
Yeah.
And then we'll open up the
Yeah.
other threads. So how do you actually feel inside as a human with a heart and a soul and emotions and a career and a partner? You're a human. How do you feel basically by being the first person to get cancelled on apparently an uncancelable show? And how has it impacted your life?
Oh my God, it's one of the worst things you can go through. Actually, it was Jordan Peterson who I heard say that being cancelled is the equivalent of receiving a near fatal diagnosis, like a health diagnosis, because clearly it's not a terminal illness. You're alive, but it touches every single aspect of your life, especially the people who you love. So you talk about my partner. You know, I've had a very amazing partner, Alan. We've been together for 4 years. You know, they were trying to get me on like sleaze, right? Effectively, gay sleaze. And it's like I literally have a completely monogamous, traditional, respectful relationship. Now, by the way, that's not me judging people. And in fact, I don't even really think I should have to talk about it. But unfortunately, because of what they were writing about me, it sort of feels relevant. So it's a bit like, why on earth are you bringing things up from when I was 25 years old? I'm a 40-year-old man in a really respectful, healthy relationship, and I have been for 4 years. So what on earth are you trying to do? So that's the first thing.
So they falsely accused you of...
Oh, I mean, all sorts.
What?
Crazy stuff. Well, the thing is, I'm more than happy for you to ask me anything, but I'm
more than happy for you to decline to answer.
No.
anything as well,
I'll
so, yeah.
ask. I will answer anything.
Yeah.
I will answer anything. You know, I'm a journalist. I'll answer.
Yeah.
I'll ask anything. But what I'm not going to do is platform lies that they've told about me. Because the thing is, it was actually someone at GB News who said that the GB News coverage of when Kevin Spacey was exonerated in court, was one of the owners of GB News who said this, was really unfair. Because he was completely cleared, right? So he's now been cleared in the US and the UK in 2 courts. But they literally, the newsreader literally repeated all of the false allegations that he's just been completely cleared for.
Don't think of a pink elephant. Oh,
exactly.
So
exactly. So
I understand that.
So for me, I'm like, if you want to ask me anything specific, I will. But in terms of what I would say about it, is the fundamental issue was they accused me of illegality. So they didn't just say, oh, he's, you know, been a bit immoral. They literally said I had broken the law. That's an incredibly serious thing. You're talking about destroying someone's reputation, taking away their liberty. And because they'd lobbied the police, they'd literally gone to the police before they reported anything. Basically, they tried to force the police's hand in to launch an investigation, because then it sounds really bad, doesn't it? And this is the problem. Even though I'm part of the media, Rob, the media has so much responsibility in how false accusations are reported, because I should have had an opportunity to show to the police that this is complete and utter bullshit. I can prove that it is bullshit. Here are the emails, here are the videos, here's everything you need to see, here's the proof. Then you make a decision. Now, in my case, and again, I don't want to bore you too much with the technicalities, but this is really important. In my case, the police were so convinced by the argument that I made, and there was such a lack of evidence of anything illegal, they didn't even pass it on to the Crown Prosecution Service. Because there's a number of stages when you're going through this, you see, because very often the police will pass something on to the Crown Prosecution, and then the Crown Prosecution Service make a decision about whether you're charged and whether you end up in court. So what I'm not going to do is put out all of their despicable and disgusting lies, because it has already damaged me, shamed me, embarrassed me. And unfortunately, these people, and I trust me, they're watching right now. They are obsessed. They comment on everything I do, everything I say. I've spoken to people who worked with them who literally said they were on a mission to destroy me. It's become a game to them. They called the police saying they thought I was going to take my own life. I mean, the things they did were despicable. So they will be listening to every single word of this right now. And what they did was not even close to journalism. They can try and convince themselves of that. I've been a tough tabloid journalist. I have never tried to destroy someone. And the worst thing is, Rob, they were sucked in. And they were sucked in by a convicted extortionist, a guy who'd been to jail for 4 years and who the judge said was a compulsive danger to society. He'd tried to extort £100,000 out of gay men. They were sucked in by a convicted violent criminal who had just been released from jail, was desperate for money, and who I have an audio recording of attempting to extort me for £100,000 in order not to go to the police. And then they were sucked in by this abusive ex-boyfriend. So
wow,
these are the people who they used to destroy my reputation.
So just so you know, because I know you don't know me that well yet, and you're a professional obviously, but I ask things because I just make the assumption that maybe my audience might not know. Some journalists you maybe are used to in the past might already know the answer. I often don't. I don't know a lot of the details because I don't care, because I think what was done to you was wrong. And until you are convicted of said accusations, in my mind, you're innocent.
Of course, and that's how the world
That's
should
how
work.
it should be. But look at what's happening with Andrew Tate and Russell Brand.
Well, we're all part of the same thing.
Well,
Andrew, Russell and me, it all happened at around the same time. So and why are they coming for the three of us? And why are they coming for Lauren?
Yes.
We know why.
Well, this is where I want to go.
We're challenging the narrative.
Right.
And they're weaponizing sex.
Well, this is what I was going to say, because some of my guests have said they use sex because it's the most outrageous, shocking thing.
Completely.
Is this true in your eyes?
Yeah, and it's still the thing that can cause easy cancellation. We're still a very squeamish society about sex. Now, when it comes to me, by the way, I love Andrew and all of those people who you've mentioned, Russell, but for them, sex was a big part of their shtick, right? Russell Brand was known as being a big shagger. Andrew has, he was like the Sun's shagger of the year multiple times. That was a part of his personality. Now, with me, my personal business has never been public. No one gives a shit. No one gives a damn. Like, no one wants to know who I was sleeping with when I was 25 years old or what my ex-boyfriend was getting me to do, right? No one cares. There was no interest in that. What there was an interest in was my destruction and them using whatever they could. And as a gay man, what's one of the things that they can do? Well, people are a bit grossed out. They're just a bit grossed out by gay sex. They don't want to hear about it because gay guys, when they're young, get up. I mean, you speak to any gay guy. I'm not making a gross generalization, but gay guys are pretty wild. Do you know what I mean? When you're in your 20s. Now, I'm telling you, hand on heart, that for the last 4 years, I've been with one human being and I will be with him for the rest of my life. We are completely in love and committed. But when I was single, what business is it of anyone as long as I was being moral and I wasn't breaking the law? So that's why, for me, I know they knew what they were doing.
So do you think Andrew Tate and Russell Brand are innocent?
I do.
You do?
I absolutely do.
Why?
But I still think, of course, it should go through a process, but I think they have been convicted of trial by social media. I think what happened to Russell Brand disgusted me.
What particularly?
So the Metropolitan Police effectively became the PR arm of the mainstream media. So there was this investigation run, and remember, apart from one person in Los Angeles, no one was actually even alleging a crime had been committed, and yet the Metropolitan Police felt that they needed to go out and launch this big announcement that, you know, if Russell Brand's ever done anything to you, come forward, doesn't matter if you have evidence or not. I mean, come on, that is the definition of a witch hunt. That is the definition of a witch hunt. And of course, let me tell you, people, when you're well known and you've had a previous relationship with them, some people become very, very jealous or envious or angry about your success. I mean, I looked at that Russell Brand investigation. Some of the women literally admitted that they were now talking because of Russell's newfound political positions. So they were literally saying, oh, we didn't mind that we'd had these relations with him when he was a famous movie star. Now that he's a hero of the right-wing alternative media, we're going to speak up. Andrew Tate and Tristan, who I watched your interview with the other day, I believe they are absolutely the victim of a witch hunt. I think it's despicable. The allegations had been totally investigated in the past. And why now? Why now? You know, 11 years on, are the Metropolitan Police taking an interest in it? Well, again, we know why they are, because Andrew Tate is all of a sudden viewed as one of the most dangerous men in Britain. And by the way, there's loads I don't agree with Andrew Tate. And I think that's really important to point out too. It's like, just because I'm completely defending his right to be proven guilty before anyone says he's guilty, likewise with Russell Brand, doesn't mean I agree with everything I say. But what I despise is the people who want to take away Russell and Andrew and Tristan's platform before they have been found guilty of a thing. And as I say, I looked into it all. It felt like a witch hunt to me. Now, that doesn't mean that Russell got up to some really unsavory stuff. But who are we to be a moral judge 15 years on? It makes no sense. And there's a real danger, by the way, when you start judging people morally for things they've done decades ago based on today's standards. That's really dangerous. And we saw that with Operation Yewtree and Operation Midland, where there were loads of high-profile people and celebrities who were falsely accused. And so for me, it's very clear what has to happen here, very clear. And this is going to be something that I campaign on. And there's a great organisation called FAIR, and this has become one of their big priorities. They work with people like Cliff Richard. And it's simple. It's really easy. Until you are charged with a crime, you should not be named publicly. And what that means is that you have an opportunity to go through the initial process with the police, and you can put your case to the police, and then the police can decide whether there's a case to answer. Until you've been charged, why on earth should you lose your job and lose your reputation? Because what we're doing is we're empowering people making false allegations. And I would argue, and this is something that all of the corporates and the media disagree with, but I would argue that you should be able to work and you should be able to maintain your livelihood until you are found guilty of a crime in a court of law. Why should charge mean that you lose your job? Because you know it can take 3 years between charge and going to court. And if you're then found innocent in court, you've still lost 3 years of your life. You're probably only going to go to jail for 6 months. So it's a really obvious thing to say, but I promise you the process is now the punishment. And I saw Keir Starmer say in Parliament the other day that he wanted, check this out, he wants any parliamentarian who is accused of a sex crime to lose their job immediately. Well, what is to stop me saying right now that Keir Starmer put his hands down my pants and groped me in the toilets at Westminster? What is to stop me saying that and going to the police and saying, are you seriously saying that you should step down and lose your job as leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, because of a completely spurious complaint? And believe me, if you don't believe that people make false complaints, wait until a false complaint is made against you by a convicted extortionist who you've never met. People make false complaints against high-profile people. They just do.
So I felt like it's more trial by media.
Yeah.
Filtered down to then trial by social media.
Yeah, definitely.
If I like,
well, with me, it was social media.
Yeah, which you see, what I loved about social media was that it was a form of decentralization away from mainstream media.
Totally.
But now, massive corporations like Facebook own most of social media. So social media, to me, feels like it's become the new mainstream media in some ways. And you've got a proliferation down from mainstream into social, and you've got mainstream pulling the puppet strings of social to a certain degree, and then of course everyone thinking that their opinion on the comments, has a lot of gravitas, which it doesn't. I absolutely despise trial by social media, therefore trial by media, therefore trial by whoever's running the media, because it's not a fair system.
No.
And something I wanted to ask you it later, but I just want to touch on it now because I need to get this point in here right now. Do you feel like now you have been proven innocent, it is fair, the apologies and the correcting of all the wrongs, or has your life been completely turned upside down and now that you've been proven innocent, well, nothing's really happened?
Yeah, the latter, to be honest. You can never prove yourself innocent. I mean, I was literally having an argument with a journalist earlier today because I read an article that he had written that said the police said there was not enough evidence to charge. And I said, you're literally making it look as if I was guilty when the police didn't even cross the first barrier with me. It's not that they thought there wasn't enough evidence to charge. That if they did, they would have handed on the decision to the CPS. The police knew that I had been stitched up. But the problem is the police release very corporate sounding statements that don't reveal the truth. So, for example, it's not been revealed that one of the people who made allegations against me is now under investigation by the police for making those false allegations because they are breaking the law by doing so. And so, no, it's very, very difficult to prove yourself innocent. I mean, I guess once you go to court, if you're charged and they think there is enough evidence, for example, with Kevin Spacey, then he was found not guilty. But by that
what
point...
what does everyone remember Kevin Spacey for?
Of course. And I was going to say, by that point...
What are they going to remember Russell Brand for? What 100%. Are they even if Andrew Tate is proven innocent, they're about, misogynist, rapist.
But that's because that's what the mainstream media want to perpetuate. And so
they're able to brand you whatever they want to brand you, even if it's not true.
Exactly, but not with me. And I'm lucky there. But also it's the truth. I only lost 6 months of my life. Kevin Spacey lost probably 7 years of his life. So I lost 6 months of my life. I lost my jobs. But the two biggest left-wing newspapers in the UK now, The Guardian and The Daily Mirror, have issued apologies to me. They've paid me damages.
Are you allowed to reveal how much?
Five-figure damages.
Right. Does that feel like enough?
No, God, no. But as I said, this was never about the money for me. It was never about the money. Basically, it's just because, you go through a situation like this and you're bankrupted by lawyers. I mean, I have an incredible lawyer, a guy called Donal Blaney of Griffin Law. He's an amazing man. And he came in when I'd basically been bankrupted, right? And he saved my life. He literally saved my life because he knew that what was happening to me was completely wrong. But before
So he helped you, but someone else might have had to pay for a really big
Well, no,
law firm?
before that point, I had.
Right.
And as I said, they bankrupted me. They wanted to take my house.
What, the lawyers?
Yeah.
Because you couldn't afford their bills.
Yeah. Because...
But yet you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And now you've been proven
Well,
innocent.
the thing is, it's not even like, as I say, it's not even like there was anything then. I mean, where I may be lucky is that Byline Times is such a discredited organisation that anyone who knows anything about them knows that they're not journalists, actually. They're activists. So the mainstream media doesn't really follow up on Byline Times. And actually, after what they've done to me, I've been told that their reputation is in the mud. And now organisations like the BBC and stuff don't want to follow them up at all because they've seen how dodgy their journalism is. But none of that matters to someone on social media who just reads a headline and just thinks, oh, God, he must be a bad guy.
So those 6 months of your life, what was it like?
The worst. The absolute worst.
Did your friends support you or leave you?
A lot left. And I've spoken to Noel Clarke a lot about this. Our situation was
He's
very
been on
similar.
the show.
Yeah, I listened actually, and he is an amazing guy. You know, we're not politically aligned or anything like that, but we went through a very similar experience where our entire life was our work, really, in a lot of ways, which is never healthy, by the way. But remember, I'd spent 20 years in the UK. My family's from New Zealand. I'd spent 20 years constantly striving for professional success. And so a lot of my friends were media friends. Do you know what I mean? Fellow presenters, celebrities, producers, editors, and very, very few of them stayed loyal. But obviously the ones that did are incredible, and I will never, ever forget them. My family...
How did they get affected? Are they okay?
Oh, they were so badly affected. It killed them. You know, it literally killed them. But my mum, my dad, my sister, we are the closest family, and they knew. You know, they knew my ex. They knew, but they were just there for me. They never made me feel for a single second like anything between us had changed or like they didn't believe in me. My boyfriend stayed completely loyal to me. He was an absolute rock. And then,
did it not test your relationship? All these accusations.
I mean, yeah, of course it tested it, but like it tested it in the best possible way. I mean, we are more in love. We know now that we can get through anything together. Like, it felt like the whole world was against us, apart from our families and our very close friends. And actually, you know, it's your friends from school, your friends from university, you know, the people who really knew me. And look, I knew I was in a horrible, toxic industry. I did. But there are certain people who I will... it's not that I'll never forgive them, but I'm just so disappointed in them.
Anyone in particular?
Yeah, I mean, there were people I was really disappointed by, like Michelle Dewberry, for example, was someone who had really got to know me over the past few years. We'd been at the launch of GB News together, which was a really difficult time. I'd spoken to her lots about the allegations against me. And she'd met my mum, who'd come over to look after me. And then she went on Good Morning Britain. When I was at my lowest point then, because it was like the whole world felt like it was against me. And, you know, it was leading the news, and she just didn't defend me at all and spoke about how disgusted she was. And it wasn't that I wanted her to say that she thought that this situation was right. I mean, I'd literally apologised. I'd apologised.
And what do you perceive you'd done wrong to apologise for?
So I think at the time, the desire was for me to say that I should have stepped in and responded harder to Lawrence's misogynistic comments. But
were you actually sorry, though?
No. Of course I wasn't. Of course I wasn't.
So why did
which
you
is why I
apologise?
didn't say anything at the time. Well, I've spoken to a lot of people about this behind the scenes, actually. And Megyn Kelly, I'll mention her again, she describes it as the hostage video apology. to put it into some sort of context, and obviously Lawrence was really angry about it, but I thought it was very unfair what he did, because you should never share someone's private communication, especially when you're using it to try and paint a bad picture about them. And I heard you two discuss it.
He still sounds like he wants to be your friend.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
We are friends. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to turn on Lawrence. You know, he's going through a really tough time. People are out to get him, but I can say that I was really disappointed about the fact he did that. And he's lost a lot of friends for doing that, right? Because a lot of people now don't trust sending messages to Lawrence because they think, is he going to leak them?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like, I just would never do that. You could send me a message about whatever you wanted. I would never publish that message. It's wrong. Yeah. But no, I wasn't sorry. But I'm trying to paint, and this is where I think Lawrence was lacking quite a lot of sensitivity. He knew what I was going through. You know, I was not in a mental place where I probably should have been going on TV every night live for 2 hours. Do you know what I mean? I'm never one to, like, lots of people told me that I should play the mental health card, and I would never do that. That's not me. That's not what I wanted to do. But it was an incredibly difficult time. I was under the most intense pressure. I mean, just imagine knowing that there's a police investigation into you based on complete lies, but you've lost one job as a result of it. You're hanging on to your second job. Then you're the lead story on every news bulletin in the country. You've got the media camped outside your house. I couldn't even leave the house. And you just want some people to talk about who you really are, and just also to accept that you've made a mistake. And so Michelle didn't do that. You know, she didn't do that. She went out to defend the channel and to throw me under the bus. The person who did do that, an amazing man, Father Calvin Robinson, who was a regular on my show and is a commentator on the right. Again, there's loads Father Calvin and I don't agree on, but he is a true friend and someone who is truly loyal. And he was the only one to say, this is wrong. Dan didn't say anything. I'm not going to appear on Dan Wootton Tonight without Dan. And he was sacked by the Free Speech Channel.
Yeah, him and Lawrence have set up a show, haven't they?
Yeah. So look, people run. You know, so the people who I will never forget and who I have so much respect for are the people who ran towards me. And I've always been a very loyal person, actually, but I've learned so much about loyalty. And as a human being now, I want to be that person. I will run towards you if you are in trouble without fear. Because the people who did that to me quite literally saved me. You know?
So this might seem like a harsh question, but I think a lot about kind of what goes around comes around, and I'm fascinated by your answer because you've done a bit of kiss and tell, and you know, if you want to go for someone, you know, you're pretty straight down the line, you'll go for them. So did you ever feel in this like, well, maybe it's just the tide's turning back on me, or there's some kind of karma?
Yeah, I've definitely thought a lot about that, as you can imagine. I'm sure there is an aspect of karma, absolutely. But, and this is a really big but, go through all of my journalism, I have never launched a relentless witch hunt against someone based on lies. Now, yes, I was a face of the tabloid media in the UK, but no one can present a story where I did that, because I didn't do that. Now, think the whole time that this was going on, it was an opportunity for every celebrity who I had ever wronged to speak up against me. And the only person who did was Lily Allen. And that was over a front page in The Sun, where she had collapsed at Glastonbury, and I had written an admittedly really nasty tweet about it. And of course, out of context, I looked at that and I thought, oh God, That's horrible. And I felt really horrible about it. But Lily, believe me, she gave as good as she got. We're the same age. We came up through showbiz together. She was having a tough time. I was the person reporting on the Bazaar column at that time. But remember, Rob, I wasn't doing stories to try and destroy people. That wasn't what I did. I was interviewing people like you did. I had a podcast. I interviewed all of the biggest stars in the world. Usually, if they were in trouble or they had a piece of information that they wanted to release to the world, they would come to me to do so. Of course, the big apology that I have made in the past couple of weeks is to Johnny Depp, because that was the only story where I felt like I got involved when I shouldn't have, because I just didn't know anything about it. And he sued me in the UK, and that was the court case where Amber Heard very famously gave evidence. Now, we won that case in the UK. She then lost the case in the US.
What are you sorry for? What do you think you did wrong with Johnny Depp?
So basically, after I was then accused by an ex, I was like, gosh, I see that relationships can be so complex. And sometimes, and by the way, I'm not saying this is what Amber did, but I'm using the general point to say sometimes an ex is just so deranged that they will stop at nothing to destroy you. And I don't think I should have got involved in it. I didn't know enough about it. I wasn't there. I didn't have any particular insight. So if you look at the big stories that I've broken a lot on, and I am really criticised on, so the royal family, Harry and Meghan, the Philip Schofield scandal, lockdowns, I know so much about those stories. I was there, I was investigating, I had personal insight, or I had journalism that added to the story. With Johnny Depp, I describe it as like getting involved in a carnival of commentary. And I just don't think that was the right thing for me to do. So do I think there's a degree of karma? Of course I do, because that's why these journalists are so desperate to try and take me down. But go through my reporting. There's nothing like what they've done. I've never shopped someone to the police based on total lies. I've never worked with criminals to concoct stories about someone. I mean, what they did was completely deranged. They basically came up with what they wanted the story to be and then tried to force people into revealing false information very often because they were being told false information. It wasn't journalism. It wasn't journalism. And they're still obsessed about certain things. I mean, a lot more will come out about this, but they are they're doing, I think, the most despicable thing at the moment in regards to Caroline Flack.
When you say they?
So Byline Times, the people who were behind the witch hunt against me, in that they are trying to somehow piece together a narrative that I was in some way responsible for her death. Now, that is literally so far from the truth. Caroline and I were friends. We had worked together for years and years and years. I never wrote one story that she wasn't happy to be published. We were personally in touch right up until her death. Her ex-fiancé, Andrew Brady, actually went to jail for making false claims against me. And the judge, who was the recorder of Sheffield, like the most senior judge in Sheffield, in his summing up, and he'd looked at everything, looked at all the messages, looked at all the documentation, made the point that I was absolutely nothing to do with Caroline's death, and in fact that we were friends. But Byline Times are pushing this narrative. Well, I have proof that what they're saying is completely untrue, and I will reveal that. I don't want to. I think it's horrible. I've kept Caroline and my relationship private because I have so much respect for her and always did. But if they are going to continue these false narratives, I'm speaking up.
So I'd like to come to some of the massive stories you broke, like the royal family, etc. But this is the perfect time to talk about what is the future of media. So you're setting up on your own, which, by the way, I think is fantastic.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I'm inspired by you.
Well, thank you. I actually think I'm sure you will. I mean, I'm sure you're wise enough anyway. But I think you may look back and think was one of the best things that happened to you. I've been an entrepreneur working for myself for 17 years, and I've built up my own media channel. I'm not as big as the BBC, but I'm getting there. And there's autonomy and freedom, and you can speak truth, and there's no agenda. So I'm excited for you. So what do you think is the future, though, of media, of mainstream media? Is it dying? Is it... A quote someone said to me once, fear screams loudest when it's dying. And mainstream media seems really scared and trying to just create all these stories and pull away all these influential people who are decentralized, like Joe Rogan. Is he not one of the biggest media outlets in the world? Just him in his little studio. So what's the future of media? Is it dead?
The mainstream media is on its deathbed.
Yes! Come on!
It is on its deathbed. And remember, I say this as someone that was part of the mainstream media for 20 years.
Well, this is what I wanted to ask you, because you should know.
Yeah. And look, I had so much hope in GB News. I poured everything into it because I thought it was going to be different. But unfortunately, it's been captured because it is controlled opposition. It has to be. The government regulator is literally threatening to take it off air. So I have spent the past 6 months, as well as clearing my name, I've actually spent the past 6 months doing a really deep dive about where the media is at, what I think I can add to it. And while this might sound sort of as if it benefits me, I genuinely believe with every fibre of my being that the independent media is the only hope for our democracy in the future. I've looked very closely at the US market, and this has already happened in the US. Now, in the UK, it's happened on the interview front, on the podcast front with people like you, James English, people like that. But it hasn't actually happened on the news front yet. Whereas in the US, it absolutely has. You've got the biggest former stars of cable news in the US, especially on the conservative side. Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Dan Bongino. They are now the big stars of the US conservative media. They don't have a TV show. Look at the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens. Look at Dave Rubin and the Rubin Report. So I am... Stephen Crowder, I am completely inspired by what they're doing, because what I realised when I left GB News, because I refused to watch the mainstream media, I used to have to, but I just won't watch it now. And I'm not really able to so I get the big in-depth interviews and that sort of thing from folk like you, but I don't get the daily news from a conservative perspective. I mean, there's loads of it on the left, isn't there, Emily Maitlis and Alistair Campbell and all of those people are thriving. So what I am going to do, so I've launched this platform, Dan Wootton Outspoken, and you can subscribe on YouTube, and I hope people do, but you can also subscribe at Dan Wootton at www.danwootonoutspoken.com, and it's WOOTTON. Sorry for that plug. But,
no, please, plug away.
Yeah, if you spell my name...
I'm not controlled by sponsors or advertisers, so I would like you to plug away.
Thank you so much. But, we've had an incredibly successful launch to begin with. We're already in the top 20 Substacks for news in the world because I'm hosting on that platform, because that's a free speech platform. But of course I'm going to be on YouTube. You have to be. I'm nervous because of the censorship issues that you've spoken about, but I'm going to give it a go, because the Daily Show will launch later this year. And it's going to be news, it's going to be opinion, but the amazing thing is, and what I am so excited about, is I'm not going to be regulated by the off-communists. So, on my old show, I had to have the lefties on all the time just to provide balance, or I had to say sorry all the time, or I had to control what people would say sometimes, and I'm not going to do any of that.
So you're literally told what to say, are you?
Well, I mean, I would never be told what to say, which is why I lost my job in the end, because I wouldn't say what they were telling me to say.
All my friends in my life are just like you, never do what we're told.
Yeah, I'm terrible with authority, Rob. Yeah. Terrible with authority. Always have been. My parents will tell you that. But But
you got an earpiece and they're telling you. Yeah.
But the thing is, I was never irresponsible. This is the thing. I'm not an extremist. I'm a responsible journalist, but I just want to tell the truth. And I don't want to have someone on saying something I completely disagree with just to appeal to the off-communists. So that doesn't mean I won't have debates and that sort of thing. So look, as I say, this might sound very self-serving, but genuinely in my own life now, I watch the independent media. I have stopped reading newspapers. You don't have to anymore. And I am doing a deep dive into this space because I genuinely believe the mainstream media is dead. I think it's corrupt. I think it's let us down. I think it lies to us on a daily basis. And the mainstream media has changed. And I mean, I'm sorry, come on. If you are trusting Robert Peston, Beth Rigby, and Laura Koonsberg to give you your news, you've got something wrong. They cannot be trusted. They are captured. They have an agenda.
And so what is their agenda?
Well, I believe their agenda is to push a particular policy position.
Right.
So you saw...
So propaganda.
Well, I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what they did during lockdown, right? So every single government press conference, every single question at the press conferences was, why are you not locking down harder, stronger, longer? That makes such a difference.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, come on. You can't trust the BBC. Everyone knows that. You can't trust what you're being told in the mainstream media. And look, this is in so many parts of our culture. There's loads and loads of areas where you just get this pressure. At GB News, they didn't want me to attack the mainstream media. They didn't want me to call Keir Starmer slippery stum. You know, all of these little things that matter. And I have that freedom back now. And the great thing is, and it's maybe one of the only positives that's come from things like Brexit and is I think the British population has woken up to this. They know. I mean, honestly, my viewers are the smartest, most on it people. And they're ordinary Brits from up and down the country, but they know how the media works now. And I think back in the day, and by the way, I'm completely guilty of this, if I saw something on the BBC, I thought, yeah, it came from a left-wing perspective, but I would think on the whole that it wouldn't be made up, that it wouldn't be a lie. But now I would argue the BBC are the biggest purveyors of disinformation in the British media.
Wow.
And they
So
believe
they lie.
all the time. And then they run this BBC Verify service trying to say that other people lie. They should be looking into themselves. And so I've looked, as I say, really closely into this. I've spoken to great people. I mean, Dan Bongino is a great example. He was booted off YouTube. He now has the #1 show on Rumble. I mean, 100,000 people watch him at one time. The guy's a phenomenon. Very, very supportive of me. He's a co-owner of Rumble as well now. And, you know, he said, GB News folded quicker than a cheap suit. You've got to get out of there. This is the future. And I really believe it is. Because I now get my news from people like Dan, from people like Dave Rubin, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson. That's where I get my news. Now, I want to get my British news too. Where do I turn? There's some really good people, Maya Tusi being an example of that. Obviously, Calvin Robinson. Lotus Eaters are a really good platform. But there's not many people doing like a daily news and opinion show, and that's what I'm going to be doing.
So that's Outspoken. Great name, by the way.
Thank you.
And website again?
So it's Dan Wootton, but you've got to put www.danwootonoutspoken.com in.
Okay.
Or you can find it on my social media, like I'm on Twitter, I'm on, or X now, X, Instagram, YouTube, all of that, Facebook.
Well, I just typed in Outspoken Dan, and then Wootton came up, and then I just went that way. So if you just
Excellent.
Google, it's not as hard to find as you
Good.
think.
I'm on TikTok now too, which I always said I would never do because of the Chinese.
Never say never.
But yeah, I've got to promote this thing. I've got to get out there.
Yeah, I'm a bit torn on that one.
Yeah.
Because
I don't like the Chinese knowing everything about me. I don't trust them.
yeah, and also just there's a lot of nonsense on there that's distracting people away from real life.
Yeah.
But it's a great.
But that's social media full stop, isn't it?
Well, true, and I try and change that by putting useful information out there. So I get the paradox of, wait a minute, I can use it as a channel to promote and hopefully push good stuff out there, but at the same time.
Well, look, the biggest challenge that we've all got, And obviously you've been an incredible success, but I imagine you still want more and more people to know that you're there.
Of course.
Because once they know that you're there and they're watching your interviews like I do, you now come up in my YouTube algorithm. So you've got it. You're absolutely fine. I've subscribed. But it's about getting people to that point, isn't it? But I do think now, I mean, do you know YouTube is now the #1 search engine in the UK? It's actually overtaking Google.
Yes.
So there's a real change in the media.
Google own YouTube.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
So it's not plurality,
No.
it's not that, but I think what it's showing is that people are starting to come to the internet to watch information on video in a way that they previously would rely on the television or would rely on newspapers. So look, I think TV and newspapers are dead. I mean, as I say, they're on their deathbed. They've got a couple more years left of fighting them. You're right. As a result, they'll shriek louder. They'll call for government intervention. I mean, the government literally kept them in business over the period. But what I would say is just be wary. Like, there are still some really good people, for example, at GB News. You know, you've got Nigel Farage, you've got Bev Turner, you've got Nana Acquare. You know, these are people who I have huge respect for. They're good, honest journalists. But just be careful, because you're going to get more about what they really think on X than you are on GB News, because they're under so much pressure. I mean, the off-communists have literally said they'll give them a statutory punishment if there's another mistake. Well, that can mean either fining them hundreds of thousands of pounds or potentially taking away their license, literally taking them off air.
I'm a big fan of decentralisation, whether it's media or money.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I think centralisation is dangerous.
Totally. I mean, I guess the thing that's hard, though, isn't it? It's about monetization, because times are tough. And I'm very, very conscious that it's difficult to ask folk for money. And I'm not. You know, if you can't afford to sign up, there's loads of ways that you will be able to get content from me for free. But if you can, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about all of us, just support the people who you believe in, because there has to be media. You have to be able to fund journalists who you trust to break stories. And it does cost money. And it's not to provide us with a luxurious lifestyle. It's to allow us to hire the producers that we need. Because remember, the BBC are getting all of that through the poll tax.
Yeah, they have plenty of funding. People don't realise, actually, being a creator, what it costs.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I just want to cover my costs, and that's why I've personally set the limit at £5 a month if people can afford to pay that. But of course, as I say, the show will be free. There'll be lots of content out there. But what I'm trying to do now is build a much closer personal relationship with my audience. I always loved that. You know, I loved hosting events. But now what's great is I email my audience directly. I message them directly. I host debates and conversations in town halls, because I need to keep in touch with my bosses. And I love that so much. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I no longer have a billionaire boss who might have their own reason to want me to take a particular position on, I don't know, energy policy. That doesn't matter to me now, because my boss is my audience, and it is incredibly liberating. So look, I hope you're right. I hope I look back and think this was the best experience of my life, and I may well think that. But the process in which it took to get me here was utterly, utterly brutal.
Wow. So you broke the Harry and Meghan exit.
Yes, Megxit.
Megxit, as it's being called.
We created that.
Wow. Your legacy.
It was a genius, though. It wasn't me. It was one of the geniuses at The Sun who created us. But it was on my story. But I will not take credit for actually inventing it.
Right. So, what's the truth behind that story then?
Well, the truth is that I had been the first person to, and this is a couple of years beforehand, to pick up on the fact that there were huge issues with Harry and Meghan within the royal family. And again, the way that royal reporting works, Rob, is actually really corrupt. Like, a lot of the public won't know about this, but there's this thing called the Royal Rota. And they are the official sanctioned journalists who work for a handful of newspapers, a handful of broadcasters, you know, the biggies, the BBC, ITV, the Telegraph, the Sun. And they are the only people that are officially allowed to cover the royal family. So they get the official press releases. They're allowed to speak to the communications secretaries. So if you're a journalist on a newspaper that doesn't have that access, you're actually not meant to report stories on the royal family. And so these journalists who are on the royal rota, they follow the royal family around. They attend events with them. They go on trips with them where they'll be on the plane having a cozy conversation with King Charles. So the problem is they're too close to the people who they're meant to be holding accountable, who they're meant to be breaking stories about. So how I got involved is actually, I think, quite interesting, because The Sun is a big royalist paper and on the whole supports the monarchy, but there was an editor of The Sun, a guy called Tony Gallagher, who's now the editor actually of the Times newspaper, very successful editor. He's edited the Daily Telegraph before as well. He's a bit of a Republican, and so he was very brave in terms of allowing me to get involved in what was, I thought, the biggest story in the world at the time. And what the story was, and what no one had reported right at all at this time, is that there was basically a massive fallout going on behind the scenes of the royal family. So the Queen, the late Queen, had fallen out with Harry over Meghan's behaviour. Kate, or Catherine, Princess Catherine, I'm trying to call her that because people get angry when you call her Kate, because she wants to be known as Catherine now. She's the future king. So Princess Catherine had fallen out with Meghan, and no one had written a word about this. And so I was the first person to sort of put my head above the parapet, totally backed by my brilliant editor at the time, and we ran the story. And the story was that the Queen had called Prince Harry into a private meeting to say that Meghan's behaviour was completely unacceptable and she had to pull her neck. And now this was all about what tiara she wore at the wedding. It actually became known as Tiara Gate because Harry has put his own spin on the story. Meghan's put her own spin on the story. And within that story, I also revealed the falling out between Meghan and Kate, which was, or as far as I knew it at the time, I think it actually runs a lot deeper, but it was over the way that Meghan had been speaking to Kate's staff members at Kensington Palace. Now, for a couple of months, no one really followed up on any of this. And it was like, oh, who's this Dan Wootton thinking that he can report on the royal family? Who does he think he is? Stick to showbiz, stick to appearing on the Lorraine show. This is our beat. And I would say to them, well, you're not real reporters, are you? You're stenographers, you're PR operatives, because this is the biggest story going on. They're all falling out. They've fallen out. I mean, look at what Harry's now revealed in his book. But slowly but surely, I kept on with these stories. I kept on revealing the truth. And eventually, the rest of the British media caught up with me. Well, you can imagine, as a result, I'm a real target. Harry really dislikes that I've revealed the truth about what's going on. And it wasn't done at that point out of any personal malice. I have a lot of personal malice towards Harry and Meghan now because they've tried to cause me so many difficulties.
What have they done?
Oh my God. So they made a false accusation, a completely false accusation that I had broken the law. Here we go again, the weaponization of the police. That I'd somehow broken the law by paying a public official for stories about them. Well, I hadn't. That did not happen. It categorically did not happen. They filed a lawsuit to try and scare me, but they ended up withdrawing it because it was untrue. But the police investigated, Kensington Palace investigated. It's really stressful to go through something like that. And again, I'm like, my journalism is completely legal. It is completely legitimate. It's completely above board. I've never hacked a phone. I've never used a private investigator even. Like, I am a very straight down the line journalist. I talk to people. That's all I do. I talk to people. Sometimes I pay them, right? But I only pay them if they are legally able to be paid. So I would never pay a public official. I'd never pay a police officer. You can't do that. It's against the law. It's not against the law in America, but in the UK, it is against the law. So he did that. Then he tried and turned other members of the royal family against me. Then he turned some of my celebrity sort of acquaintances against me, like James Corden. And then he branded me a sad little man in his autobiography, Spare. So
Wow.
he really dislikes me. But again, I would just say I was never trying, I wasn't ever trying to destroy Harry and Meghan. It's just, this is a very legitimate story. Like, I find it astonishing to believe that he doesn't realize that Harry and Meghan leaving the royal family, that Harry doesn't understand that that is a story with vast constitutional repercussions, and that it has complete, there's a complete public interest justification in a story like that.
Do you think this whole Megxit and the Harry and Meghan scandal was the start of the end of the royal family as we know it?
No, absolutely not. And I was shocked by the Daily Mail the other day. You know, after the Kate photoshopping scandal, they ran a big front page saying, this is the 11th hour for the royal family. What rubbish. Look at what the royal family has got through and survived. I mean, the royal family survived the abdication of the king so that he could go off and have a relationship with the American divorcee Wallis Simpson. And by the way, that couple loved Hitler. They were Hitler loving. And the royal family survived that. The royal family survived Princess Diana and the death of Princess Diana, even though Princess Diana had written a letter saying that she thought she was about to be killed in a car accident. The royal family has survived a lot.
Do you think Diana was killed?
No, but I think it's a legitimate area of investigation, and I think just like William and Harry, I've certainly had suspicions over the years.
What are your suspicions with William and Harry?
I think William and Harry have had doubts about the official version of events around their mother's death.
Wow.
And I think they had good reason to, because of the note she had written. But the likelihood is it was Henri Paul, an incredibly drunk driver making very reckless decisions. But I think it's legitimate, given the way that Diana was challenging the establishment in a relationship with Dodi. I think it was legitimate to ask questions, just like I still ask questions about the assassination of JFK, because it feels completely unrealistic to think that there was not a second gunman possibly on the grassy knoll. Do you know what I mean? And it's like Diana's death is sort of up there with JFK as one of those shocking moments of the 20th century. And there was a lot of circumstantial evidence around it to suggest that all was not what it seemed. The fact that she had literally written a note saying that she thought her brakes were going to be tampered with in a car accident. Come on. There was definitely reason to open the official inquiry. But that doesn't mean that I sign up to the Muhammad al-Fayed narrative, which was that Diana was killed by the British establishment. But I think it was worthy of investigation, and I think William and Harry agree with that. But I think we've probably got the answer now, which is why my answer to your question was no, but I've never found, the owner of the white Fiat. And there are just like JFK, I think there will always be questions asked. And Marilyn Monroe, there will always be questions asked about the deaths of those icons. But is it just because we can't accept our icons dying at a time when they're at the height of their power and the height of their beauty? Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? And that's one I'm open. I just think people say you're a conspiracy theorist. I'm not, actually. I'm really not. But I'm open to challenging the official narrative on things. And I think that's really important that we do that on a whole load of issues.
And then what about the current situation with the royal family?
You've got Harry and Meghan constantly stirring the pot. They want to bring down Catherine and William. It's really nasty. So do you remember when Catherine and William did that royal tour of Jamaica and the Caribbean? And the narrative was, they're so old-fashioned because here they are, standing on a football pitch and there's all of these young black kids behind a barbed wire fence. And it was a terrible image. The optics were not good. It went around the world. But why did it go around the world? Because that was the narrative being pushed by Harry and Meghan. And they often use, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but have you seen that really odd-looking bloke, Omid Scobie? He wrote Finding Freedom, and he's the little weirdo that writes all the stuff about Harry and Meghan. And so they've got really powerful people in the media pushing this narrative. And so the problem is, in 2024, you probably just can't get away with saying, Catherine's going to disappear for 4 months. Just doesn't stand.
Now, I've been on a mission for 17 years to help as many people on this planet get better financial knowledge. If, like me, you'd like to make, manage and multiply more money, I recommend that you join my digital financial freedom platform, which is called rob.team. It's really easy to join. You just type in rob.team, and there you're going to learn my 4 M's of making, managing, maintaining and multiplying more money. There are hundreds of hours of courses, resources and masterclasses on building recurring and passive income, getting your tax bill down, your income streams up, your earning speed up and your earning power up. And the even better news is there's no risk to you, because it costs less than 20 pence a day to join. You can cancel anytime with no ongoing contract. You simply type in rob.team into any web page. Now, if you join right now, I'll also give you my 12-week Money Mastermind University completely for free. This will retail at $500 to $700 when I launch it. It's about 14 hours of what they should teach you at school and university about money, but the banking system and the governments control you and don't want you to know that. It exposes the banking system and teaches you how to play them at their own game. And all the things your parents and society don't know about money and didn't want to teach you about money and wanted to hide away about money is exposed in my Money Mastermind University. If you join rob.team right now, you get that completely for free. Just type in rob.team. I'll see you inside with the 10,000 other members who are moving, shaking, game-changing and change-making in rob.team. Are they okay, William and Catherine? And it just all...
You're concerned about it?
Yeah, I am. I think that there's cracks everywhere, and I'm not got any evidence. I'm not inside it like you, but just all like... I remember watching, I'll come back to it, but I remember watching Harry and Meghan on Oprah. I didn't want to watch it, but I had to watch it because I thought that going on and exposing the Queen is the most ridiculous thing to do. Like, if there's one person on this planet that ever lived that you should admire, it is the Queen. What an amazing
Prince Philip,
woman.
Her husband, was literally dying. Let's not forget that.
Wow. And then he goes on and throws his dad under the bus. The now king. And
it's unforgivable.
And
well, that's the thing. The way they have behaved is unforgivable. And all of these people who think that there's going to be some sort of big reconciliation between William and Harry are delusional.
So they're done, are they?
They're done. They are done. I'm sorry. Think about what Harry revealed in the book about not just William, but also Catherine, and in their Netflix documentary too. It's unforgivable. It's done. That relationship is over. Now, Charles, the king, is a soft touch, but he still only spent 15 minutes. I mean, imagine, if one of my mum or dad are diagnosed with cancer, I am on that plane and I am going to be there for as long as they need me. Harry was with his father for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. And he flies back. It's done. It's done. And the thing that Harry doesn't realize, because Harry is quite a stupid guy as well as being quite a nasty guy, how can you come back from attacking your father's wife and your brother's wife? That's a red line. William always made it clear, if he comes for Kate, if he comes for Catherine, that's it. So did Charles, actually. Because they try and protect their wives. And there's a huge hypocrisy, isn't there? Because Harry claims that all of the reason that he hates the media is because the media was so horrible about Meghan, which isn't true. It's just not true. Go back and look at the early headlines. Everyone embraced Meghan, but that's the narrative that he claims. Well, then why is it okay for him to attack Camilla and for him to attack Catherine? He's a hypocrite.
Yeah.
He's a total hypocrite. And he revealed private conversations that had taken place between him and the late Queen. And remember, all of this went on when the Queen was dying of blood cancer. And it caused her significant stresses in her final months on the planet. And I totally agree with you. If there's one person who you just leave. I mean, that woman was untouchable.
Yeah.
She literally had a couple of difficult weeks when Diana died. And aside from that, the public adored her from the start of her reign to the end of her reign. I still find it really hard to think that we don't have the Queen around.
Mm.
And he went for her. I mean, it's just grim. It's grim.
And do you literally think it's just because of Meghan's influence?
No, I don't. I've never been one of those people, actually. So a lot of people do. A lot of people blame it all on Meghan. I absolutely don't. No, Harry was already going off course. He already had this sort of visceral, psychotic hatred of the media, was totally obsessed with what was being written about him. Now, look, Harry's supporters say, of course he does. Look at what happened to his mother. But again, your podcast is all about correcting false narratives, right? I love Princess Diana. I thought she was like literally the greatest celebrity of the 20th century. Adored that woman. But my goodness, Diana worked with the media so closely. The idea that she was treated badly by the media is a myth. One of her best friends was Richard Kay, the royal editor at the Daily Mail. She spoke to him on an almost daily basis, including in the hours before her death. She manipulated the media. She played the media, not in a bad way. She made herself the most famous, powerful woman in the world. But this idea that Harry tries to portray Diana as some sort of victim is just ludicrous. The paparazzi, now that's a different conversation, right? The paparazzi was out of control then, but that's very different to the media. They're a sector of the media. And then also, Harry, mate, you're one of the most privileged men on earth. It's absolutely horrendous that you lost your mother in those circumstances, but you speak to virtually any human being on earth and they will have suffered some sort of tragedy in their lives, right? Whether you're driving a taxi, whether you're working on the building site, whether you're working in your Tesco or a lawyer or whatever, we all have terrible tragedies that we have had to comprehend, and we live with grief on a daily basis. Virtually every human being does. So Harry is not unique on that front. And does it excuse appalling behaviour? I don't think so. I mean, this is a multi-millionaire. You know, the Queen Mother and Diana left him a fortune of many, many millions, money that you or me could only dream about. He grew up in palaces, but he would moan and spare that Prince William got a bigger room than him in the palace. I mean, he's just so entitled, it's beyond belief. He is not a victim. Meghan is not a victim. They are privileged people. I mean, I've got to know the Markles very, very well. You know, Thomas Markle Jr., Samantha Markle, they're friends of mine, right? They're good people, true Americans, right? Patriots. And very different to Meghan. I mean, she was embarrassed about them, but they're good people. And Meghan had a really good upbringing, thanks to her father. Mm. You know, he was a lighting director on Emmy award-winning TV series. He's literally got an Emmy in his lounge. I mean, she was raised in a privileged lifestyle in California. These two are privileged people. They are not victims. They had every opportunity to change the world within the royal family. Mm. But what did they put first? They put first ego and money. Because fundamentally, Harry couldn't accept that he was never going to be king.
Wow. Yeah, and since then, they made tens of millions of a podcast they didn't even produce any episodes for, really. It's like, that pisses me off. I've done 1,000.
Of course, Spotify. I mean, come on. Like, Spotify spent millions building them a studio in their house, right? This mansion in Montecito, which they barely use. I mean, the arrogance of that. Mm. Oh, someone's going to pay us tens of millions, but we're just not going to produce any content. And then, I mean, I don't know if you managed to sit through any episodes of Meghan's podcast, but I mean, it was
the 7 or so
horrible.
that were published.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it literally was 7, and it was awful.
And then what? Netflix, they must have got not far short of 100 million for that, just for...
Yeah, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, because Netflix is the company that so far has actually stood by them, even though the only product really that they've actually delivered is that tell-all about the royal family, their own documentary. And then they've made like one series about the Invictus Games and one documentary series that flopped. So they haven't really delivered. But I think it's really interesting. You talk about the media as well, and I think people are getting sick of these very privileged celebrities getting huge deals to preach to them. Obama and, all the lefty American celebrities, Jada Pinkett Smith, none of those deals are working out, you know.
No.
They're not authentic people. Why do we want to have them tell us how we should live our lives?
I agree with that. And also, surely value in the world works that you provide value first and then you get paid. Not you get given 50 million to redevelop your house and have a studio. Oh, and then you can't be asked to do a podcast.
But I guess more fool Spotify, and they quickly realise that. I mean, I think Spotify is actually a really good company, but I think they realised that
you can't blame them for wanting to chase the deal down. Yeah.
No, but I think they realised actually people will not listen to a podcast simply because it's got a big name attached. The podcast has to be good. The people making it have to be authentic. They have to be prepared to share honest information about their lives. And also, Harry and Meghan just caused them lots of stress because, I mean, this is the arrogance of them. They basically were demanding at one point for Spotify to sack Joe Rogan for misinformation. And it's like, oh my God, imagine if Spotify had sacked Joe Rogan for Harry and Meghan. I mean, that would have been the worst business decision in history.
Yeah, well, they succeeded with Piers Morgan, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
They did. And they've lobbied my bosses as well. It's still really hard to come up against a force like Harry and Meghan and the media. They are not outsiders. They still have the establishment on their side, even though they've fallen out with the royal family.
Wow. Who's next then? Which big names are the mainstream media going to go for next? Who do you think is going to get cancelled? Who's dangerous?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because how is the mainstream media going to cope with the second coming of Trump? I think about that a lot, and I worry for his family. I just think they are going to be the next targets. Because I think the media, I mean, look at the damage they've caused with Trump, but I think they know that Trump's kids are his weak spot, obviously. And so I think they are real targets, actually. And then from a UK perspective, I think they're going to come down very, very hard on Nigel Farage and the people behind Reform UK, which is, if you're listening from overseas, the insurgent party on the right here in the UK, which is trying to revolutionise British politics and take on the Conservative Party. And I think that's something that I want to do on my independent platform. I want to provide honest reporting about what's going on in the right of British politics, because even just this week, the BBC has been forced to apologise for describing the Reform Party as far right. This far right term has been thrown around everywhere. Nigel is now under investigation by the Off Communists just for hosting a show on GB News. So I expect cancel culture to really come and try and hit Farage as well. They've already come for Lee Anderson, the very controversial former Conservative MP who jumped ship because of controversial comments he made about Sadiq Khan. So I would look out for Trump's kids and for Nigel Farage. I think they are currently the top cancel culture targets in the media in the US and the UK.
So on this show we have a round called Disrupt Us Round, because this show is called Disrupt Us. So we have just 4 questions that are on that theme. So the first one is, what's the biggest disruption that's ever happened in your life? That is the question. But yeah, what's the biggest disruption you've ever experienced?
Yeah, I mean, look, in all seriousness, it was my cancellation from the mainstream media, because what you've got to realise, I know we've spoken about it in detail, but if you're talking about it from like a overarching perspective like that, it's like work for 20 years to achieve everything that you've got, you know, top rated primetime news show, #1 show on GB News, #1 column on Mail Online. I had worked 20 years for that. That doesn't happen overnight, right? But you lose it overnight. So that is like a disruption like nothing else. I mean, literally overnight after the Lawrence Fox incident, I lost all of that.
Wow.
So that's a disruption, right? That's a big disruption.
Minor blip in the career of Dan.
But by the way, I think you have to have these disruptions. I mean, I look at all of the people who I respect, and all of them at some point have hit rock bottom and lost everything.
That's why
it happens in interesting lives and careers. Otherwise, you've lived too boring a life.
I completely agree. And it gives you context, and it becomes a motivator.
Yeah, and makes you humble as well. I mean, I have a lot more humility after what's happened. I think much more about decisions I make in terms of how I cover things. You know, actually, I could be a much better person, and I think I probably will be a much better person for going through this experience.
And what's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
It was definitely leaving News UK. So I was executive editor at The Sun. I had a daily show on Talk Radio, which at the time was potentially going to become Talk TV. I'd just broken the story of Megxit. You know, I was in a really good place with my career. And I jumped ship to launch GB News. And do you remember those first weeks of GB News? I mean, it was literally considered the biggest laughing stock in the British media. It was described as the worst launch in television history. And I was sort of thinking, what have I done? I've left a really cushy job as part of the Murdoch empire. So it was the biggest risk. But even though it ended so terribly and so sadly, I genuinely think it paid off. I think we created something really important. And I created an amazing audience of people.
What's your most brutal life lesson?
I think it's that the people who you think are going to be there for you when the chips are down are not. And I really would encourage people to think carefully about the people who they put their time into. Because if they're not going to be there for you when you have nothing, then what's the point in being friends with them when things are good?
What's the most disruptive thing anyone's ever said to or about you?
Well, again, and I'm so sorry that these are all on a similar theme.
Don't be sorry.
But of course, it's that I broke the law. Because I didn't. And they knew what the consequences of saying that was going to be.
So now we have a quick fire round.
Fun.
So basically, it is fun. But basically, how much you want to leave dictates the length of your answers. So if these are one-worders, you clearly want to get out of it.
Oh, God, you might be here all day, Rob.
Would you rather have 1 million engaged social media followers on your new channel, or 1 million cash, and why?
Oh my God, definitely followers.
Yeah?
Definitely followers. As I've said, I'm not in this for the money. I never have been.
But you still need to get paid and live a good life.
100%. But from that million followers, there's so much I could do with them. You know, I could create something rather than just having the cash. No, definitely the followers. That's not even a tough one for me.
It's tough for a lot of people. A lot of people take the cash. Yeah. The people who don't take the cash, which I reckon is only about 25 to 30%, they usually understand media.
Yeah.
And it's like a no-brainer, but yeah, most take the cash.
No, total no-brainer for me. Get me to that million.
Yeah.
Following.
Yeah.
Not in the bank account.
Yeah. What's the best advice you ever received or remember receiving?
It's just my mum saying, be yourself, Dan. Because obviously I grew up as a gay, closeted kid in New Zealand. And so for many, many years, I wasn't myself. you see. And so it was it's so powerful. My mum always just says, be yourself. That is enough. And it's very simple, but I think actually it is the most important piece of advice, because how many people now in life are just pretending to be someone they're not, especially with social media.
Can you remember a moment in your life, your mum was drilling it into you to be yourself, but was there a moment in your life where you finally were liberated to be that person?
Yeah, only very recently.
Wow.
Really, only very recently. I think it was when I was hosting my show, because you can't, trust me, when you're doing, well, I was doing 3 hours of live TV a night. It went down to 2 hours. But when you're that exposed, you can't lie about who you are to your audience. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's when I truly finally felt that I was myself, because previously when I'd been doing things in the media, it had been quite brief. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd be popping up on the Lorraine show for 10 minutes in the morning. That was never really do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite recently.
What's the worst advice you ever remember receiving?
To not fight back against my ex-boyfriend when he made untrue claims about me.
Why would anyone give you that advice to not fight back?
Because a lot of people think that in a situation like that, you shouldn't bring attention. You shouldn't try and legitimize something because it will go away. But in my case, it did not go away. It got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I was trending #1 for 3 days on social media in the UK. And so the advice was wrong.
Wow.
I should have hit back with the truth immediately.
What's your biggest regret?
That's really hard. Again, it's really hard for me to not just think about the last few months, because hopefully in a couple of years, I won't think about this period so much. But I'd say my biggest regret is probably the way that I left GB News. It was such a big part of my life, and I think I was such a big part of that channel, and it meant so much to me, and I know it meant so much to the audience, and I didn't get to say goodbye. I was just gone. I was literally led out of the office by a security guard, having been suspended. As I say, it's just a job. I hope in a few months' time it's not such a big thing for me. But for the moment, that feels like it, if I'm talking professionally. Could think of personal things, but yeah.
We haven't got another 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
What's one big thing that you think's wrong with the world that you'd like to change?
I honestly, truly believe that it is the lack of free speech. And what I mean by that is not now that you'll be banned on social media or something like that. I mean, it is the terror that good people have to be honest about situations, usually in their workplace, but also at their school or at their university or at their social club, because they are so scared of the repercussions of sharing their perfectly legal opinions. And I see it all the time. I literally have friends at the moment who have lost jobs for being honest about what they think about the state of the world. Lost entire careers. Not people in the public eye, by the way. I'm talking about ordinary people in ordinary jobs. I think it's shocking. It's chilling. Because think of what it means. It means we will not be challenging the narrative of things. People shouldn't be scared to be honest about what they think.
No. And have you got a maybe 10, 15-second tip for strong mental resilience, bearing in mind you've gone through hard times?
Yeah, I mean, God, just keep your family close, I think, would be the most important thing. Try and not to fall out with your family. I know it's not always easy, but I couldn't have got through the past year without my family. you know.
This show is called Disruptors. What does the word disruptive mean to you?
I think it means being brave, actually. Being brave, because to disrupt, you have to do things that are going to make you uncomfortable, and you're often going to take a short-term hit. Now, I look at myself and I think maybe I haven't been brave because this was forced upon me. Do you see what I mean? Would I have disrupted, or would I have just continued along, taking my nice paycheck, taking my nice salary in the mainstream media? So I'm not saying that I have been brave, but I think to disrupt, you have to be brave. And obviously now I am trying to disrupt.
And talking about disruption, tell us about that platform again and what your social media main...
So I think the two main places where I'm desperate for people to sign up and join the platform, it's via Substack, but you can just find it by typing in www.danwootonoutspoken.com or by Googling Dan Wootton Outspoken. And given a lot of people will be watching here on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel, Dan Wootton Outspoken. Make sure it's my channel, because have you dealt with this? On YouTube, I've got an impersonator who is stealing all of my photos and content, and they're getting tens of thousands of followers.
Yeah, nickel your content.
It's driving me insane. So please just make sure that it is not the Dan Wootton Outspoken fan page. Make sure it is Dan Wootton Outspoken. But yeah, look, YouTube's new for me.
Yeah.
This is new. You know, you've been on YouTube for years. Some people have been growing the YouTube platform for years. Because I was previously employed by the mainstream media, I wasn't allowed to have a YouTube platform. So this is all new for me. But there is going to be a daily show there coming very soon, and I hope people who enjoy your show will really enjoy it.
Dan, this has been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I fight for free speech, and I don't think people should be cancelled unless they are guilty. I believe we are all innocent until proven guilty. However, right now, people are trialled by social media, trialled by mainstream media. I think this is really wrong. If you agree with me, make sure you leave a comment about that. And if you support my quest to continue to get the most disruptive guests on the planet, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on. And remember, if you don't risk anything, you risk everything.